All right, Ulysses, you mentioned last week it was venting week if you're a Rays fan. Maybe this is venting off season if you're a Rays fan, because we continue to get not necessarily venting questions, but just great questions and comments from our listeners out there. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mailbag question. Maybe you just bring a great topic to the table and we dive into it. And we've got some great topics to dive into, thanks to our awesome listeners out there.
We always do. And again, I would put Locked On Rays mailbag questions, concerns, and suggestions above anybody else on Locked On MLB. That's for sure. I think you guys are doing great. And so without further ado, let's get started.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On Rays your very first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Rays is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Rays. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And you can email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. That also includes voice memos as well. You just pick up your smartphone, go to the voice memos recorder app, and talk for 15, 30, 45 seconds. Email that puppy to us, and we'll get it played and read on air. Not that difficult if you are interested in having your voice heard literally on this podcast here. All right, that preamble aside. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we get started, I want to say a big thank you, guys. 486 subscribers on YouTube. That is so cool, so cool. That number keeps going up. People, can we make it to 500 before the World Series? Yeah. Is it a tough ask? I know Rays fans are feeling down. I know it's venting off season, venting off week number 2. But please, if you haven't subscribed yet, if you're just an audio listener, just head to YouTube, subscribe to it, and then just keep, doing your audio thing. That's completely fine. But just help us out to reach other Rays fans that have not heard of Locked On Rays yet.
So you said 487 is what we're at right now?
486.
486. So that, Barry Bonds on base percentage, 1 year, multiple years, or for his career.
Yeah.
500, that's my deadlift weight. So let's try to have, no, I'm just kidding. That's not even close.
Just a flex, just a light flex on the show.
I deadlift like 900. So we got a long way to go.
There you go.
All right. No, seriously, I don't do that at all. All right. Let's get into these comments and questions from our listeners out there. This one from, oh my gosh, I feel so bad about this one. Is it Mia or Maya?
I think it's Mia.
Mia Franz.
I would think so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. She emails us. This is we love our over-unders. Yes. And she throws a couple of them at us. Harold Ramirez, assuming he's on the team next year, which she's rooting for, over under 20 home runs. Randy Arozarena, over under 25 home runs next year. Brandon Lowe, back and healthy, let's assume, over under 30 home runs. And yes, let's go out and get Michael Brantley if he's healthy. Maybe he can give us another 10 to 15, or at least get on base a lot like Wander. She also says, I still miss Joey Wendell. Thanks again for being awesome.
Well, thank you, Mia, for listening to the show, watching the show, and supporting us and giving us your feedback and your mailbags. I have this conspiracy theory because of the way that Mia writes her emails. Mm-hmm. I think she's like an English teacher.
I think she established that in one of her first interactions with us last year.
Wow.
I
Okay,
don't
so
want to
maybe
blow up her
that's
spot, but I think she has an affiliation with a private school in the Tampa Bay area. I won't go any further, but I think that's the case. I could be
okay.
wrong.
Okay, so maybe that's something in the back of my brain that I was like, man, I like the way that she writes emails. I'm an email snob. I like my emails to look good. So
You
her
want your
emails always.
semicolons, you want your apostrophes,
I need yes, 100%.
subject, verb.
Yeah, and conjugations that they need to be right. Like when people, the whole Ross and Rachel, YOUR, all that stuff. Like it needs to be perfect. So I
Yeah.
appreciate Mia's email. Anyway, to the point. Harold Ramirez, that's the first one, correct?
Yeah, let's start with him. Over under 20 home runs in 2023.
Can we agree that Harold Ramirez probably, if they knew what they were going to get from Harold Ramirez, he would have gotten more at bats this year? Like if they knew that was going to be slash line, he was going to get more at bats.
Sure, I will agree with you on that one.
403 at bats. That's not bad. That's not bad. 6 home runs though. 6. I would be silly, I think, if I were to say over. So I think he would be under the 20 home runs. I think you would make this interesting if you were to say 10.
Yeah, I think 10 to 12, that would make it a little bit more palatable with Harold Ramirez. Again, 6 home runs and 403 at bats this past season. Just 24 career home runs in 1,173 at bats across multiple teams. The most he's had in a single season was 11. And let's also acknowledge Harold Ramirez. Yes, he makes contact. Yes, he hits the ball, but you get a lot of bleeders, bloopers, C&I singles, balls just over the second baseman, shortstop, what have you. Now, if you look at his spray chart, maybe there's maybe about a half dozen doubles that, depending on which ballpark he was playing in on that particular night and what the conditions were and what the wind was and how high the temperature was and how good his bat and the ball was, maybe he could have gotten to 10, but that's stretching it right there. So I would say yes, absolutely under 20 home runs. I do see him getting double digits, though. I think that's certainly within the realm of possibility for sure.
Okay, so wait. So 9.5, you would say over?
Yes, I would say over.
I would too. I would too.
But barely. Like, I'm not saying like 18 or anything like that.
No. I'm saying like 10, 11 at the most. Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
Randy Arozarena. Now, this is where it gets, as we progress with Mia's comments here, it gets more fun. I don't know if she set that up purposefully, but
I think she did.
Randy, Randy, over under 25 home runs in 2023.
Oh my goodness, Mia. I so badly, just for my own mental health sake as a Rays fan, would love to say over. But what they've done to the baseball, what they've done to the fact that pitchers are throwing frisbees out there. They're no longer baseballs. They're throwing frisbees at 94 miles an hour, and they're calling them sliders. Not to sound like a boomer, but here I go. Back in my day, in 1998, a 94 mile an hour pitch was a fastball, a 4-seam. Okay? Now there's dudes throwing 94 mile an hour sliders, changeups. Sandy Alcantara, he throws a 93 mile an hour slider. Like, what? That's stupid. What are you doing? What are you doing? I cannot say over 25 home runs. However, Mia, I will say I do think he's going to etch out his previous best of 20. And I think he will be over 20, but not quite 25. So I'm thinking he's going to be landing in that window of 22, 23, but not going to touch 25. What about you, Kevin?
What I think is that the commuter shirt can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. You'll get my answer eventually. But first, you need to head over to Rhone.com/locked on and use promo code locked on to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to Rhone.com/locked on. Can't spell that. Here it is. RHONE.com/locked on and use code locked on, LOCKEDON. It is time to find your corner office comfort, and you can do that with Rhone. I feel like Rhone sounds like a Division III school in the Midwest or something like that. Yeah, I went to Rhone College. I could see a little ring to that.
I could also see some like bad villain baseball guy that hits a lot of home runs in a major league movie called Rhone.
Yeah, Mark Rhone. Man, Mark Rhone. Man, he sucks.
I hate that guy. Oh man,
but the commuter shirt is awesome.
Good. Yes, but when he steps up to the plate, oh man, I hate that guy.
Just wait till the Cubs call up a Mark Rhone in 2023 or something like that. I could see that happen.
Yeah.
See on the prospect list. Randy, I agree with you. I also think he'll get under 25 homers this upcoming year. Yes, he had 20 this year, 21 last year, 20 this year, and 645 plate appearances. That's a lot of action. Now, he is entering or would be entering his 28-year-old season, which, I mean, that is right in the prime. That is right where I would think that the capital and the power capital would come about. Now, what maybe worries me a little bit about Randy is he's been in the league long enough. You mentioned frisbees, teams throwing frisbees. We know what Randy's sweet spot is. It's the fastball. So you look at any scouting report, it's going to say, don't throw Randy a fastball if you can avoid it. Now, what may work in his favor is more of a balanced schedule where you have some of these other teams and opponents and pitchers that say, okay, I see the scouting report, but I'm pretty damn good myself. I can whiz one by him, and maybe he turns into a few there. But we also have to acknowledge, with Randy, it's okay. Maybe you want 25 home runs or over. I don't know if he's ever going to get to that threshold there, but what are you sacrificing? If he, all right, I want to get 25 to 30. You bulk up, you get stronger, you add more muscle mass, then maybe that affects your speed. Maybe if that affects your base running ability. Maybe that affects your defense. So what's the trade-off with that? And as we talked about on an episode already this week, Isaac Paredes, he goes hot, then cold, then hot, then cold. That's Randy for you. Inconsistent. Mark Topkin pointed it out in one of his articles. I mean, if you go by OPS by month this season for Randy, it was 507, 860, 693, 812, 1023, 685. And we know how he ended the season very, very terribly and very terribly in the playoffs. So I don't know how much that affects. I don't know how much that affects his ability to hit 25 homers in 2023. I just would lean slightly under that, 2 to 23. 25, maybe stretching it a little bit. And he has to stay healthy all year. Can you do that?
I mean, again, he played, how many games did he play this year? 153. 153.
He was the only guy that didn't get injured.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Amazing. But him and Yandy, basically, I mean, Yandy could have gone on the IL. They chose not to put him on the IL, but they might as well should have. But no, I agree with your point on what does he sacrifice by bulking up and just kind of selling out more by going home runs. Yeah, you would be losing something. And I don't think I want to lose anything. I want to keep Randy Arozarena as is without, I mean, the pop is fine as it is right now. But I do have, man, we've talked about the way that sometimes the Tampa Bay Times does act more like a spokesperson for the team rather than a critically, commenting on what's going on as a third party perspective.
It's not the New York Daily News or the New York Post or the Philly Inquirer or the Boston Herald or the Boston Globe.
And my point with that is if in the last week there have been 3 articles written by Topkin on Randy Arozarena might be on the trading block. I think Topkin, I mean, the Rays are basically putting it out there like, hey, teams,
we're trading Randy.
I mean, he's available. Like I base it. These Topkin articles are basically an invitation for other teams to, hey guys, don't assume that Randy Arozarena is untouchable. If you've got the right haul, we are going to listen to your phone call and not just straight up hang up. We are going to listen. And I feel like the Rays do have that reputation that they're going to listen to most things. They're not going to go through with them, but they're going to listen to a lot of these calls. But I think this is basically like putting a feeler out saying, hey, if anybody wants a Randy Arozarena, just call and you know the number and give us a haul.
It's very possible that he maybe something we know about the blow up with him and Yandy Diaz. And I honestly, not to say, because they're both Cuban, that they would get along in perpetuity, but I would not have really expected that between those two. But that may have been the start of something. There could be something there with Randy for sure, and that's maybe why that they're floating the trade block or hey, he's available scenario. Now, if that's the case, if he is available for trade, then I totally change my points in my argument, and I think if he winds up in Cincinnati, for example, then I think he could be an over 25 home run guy. But if we're just talking about him as a race specifically, no.
To be a fly on the wall that night in that parking lot, did Ji-Man Choi actually come out and separate them wearing flip-flops? Did that actually happen? What was the argument about? Was it on field? Was it off field? Did it actually happen? Did it actually come to blows? Was it just guys just arguing in a very loud voice and maybe a shove or two? I mean, we don't know. They know. I don't think a lot of people know. And I think a lot of people that say that they know, they would say what they would say if they knew.
But let's also acknowledge this. Those types of things aren't uncommon in
No, they happen all the time.
Yeah, happens all the time. In fact, there's a lot worse that happens too in a clubhouse.
Didn't in 09, maybe 010, in the early stages before he got traded to the Giants, didn't Pat Burrell and Carl Crawford got into like a wrestling match, but not like a Jim Hickey, Grand Balfour type of wrestling match, but it was like I bleeping hate you and I'm going to put you in a chokehold because I really dislike you type of thing. Didn't that happen?
Well, it happens. I believe that has been recorded and reported. So regardless, I think we've answered the Randy question. Now moving on to Mia's next point, Brandon Lowe, over under 30 home runs in 2023 with the Rays. Let's remember he had 39 last season or 2021 season. I'm gonna have to get used to that. This past season, he didn't have 39. He had a lot fewer than that.
Can you tell me how many he had, Kevin?
Oh, off the top of my head, didn't he have like 8 and 60 games or something along those lines?
I think he had 8. I am sorry for the Brandon Lowe fans out there. I want to say over, but I can't. How could you say over with number one, a guy coming off an injury-plagued season, right? Yeah. Number two, knowing that the baseball, the actual item that he has to put in the seats, doesn't get put in the seats as often as it once used to. So how can you say with a straight face that Brandon Lowe is going to hit over 30 home runs? If you're a Rays fan and you're saying he's going to hit more than 30 home runs, go out there into, the outside of your home, touch grass, look at the sky up there, and spend some time there. Stop looking at the spreadsheets. It doesn't make sense to just say straight out that he's going to hit more than 30 home runs. It doesn't. Why would you put green Skittles on Bet Online on that? I wouldn't.
Yeah. Before I answer that, well, you mentioned Bet Online. I thought you were going to go Built Bar. I was going to say maybe if Brandon Lowe had some Built Bars, like if he had a lifetime supply of Built Bars in the clubhouse, in his cubicle, at his home, his residence, at his spring training home, then yeah, maybe he gets to 30. I'm on the same wavelength with you, but I think we got to tell the audience about Built Bar first.
I think you know what? In that particular case, if Brandon Lowe comes out and he's like, "Oh, I'm eating Built Bars all the time," then I'm like, "Yeah, over
Yeah.
30 home runs," and I'll tell you why. Because that means that he's probably eating cookie dough chunk puffs, which only have 660 calories, and they have an amazing amount of 15 grams of protein in them. And you guys know it, so say it with me. What's the percentage of real chocolate in Built Bars? Everybody, class, 100%. Yes, that is right. 100% real chocolate. It's delicious. You guys know it. We've been telling you about Built Bars for years. Okay, so this is what you have to do. You go to built.com, you use promo code, attention here, it's a new one, locked on 15. Okay, that's the promo code, locked on 15, and you get 15% off your order. So today, do not delay. Go to built.com, use promo code locked on 15 and get 15% off your order at built.com.
And a little tip here: if you refrigerate them for a couple minutes, that's my move. I trademark that one.
Yeah.
In fact, you need to
TM.
You need some tips on refrigerating your protein bars, come to me. I can give you all the
There you go.
the help you want with that. Brandon Lowe, couple questions. Do we expect him to play at least 140 games, upwards of 150 games? Because I think that's what it's going to take. We know about his injury history.
Right.
It also, and I think the Rays will resolve this in some sense, is the offense around him, the bats around him. Will he himself have some sort of protection? Because if he doesn't, or if he doesn't have what's perceived as enough protection, then you could have teams pitch around him a little bit more and pick their spots of, all right, we're not going to let Brandon Lowe hit a 3-run shot off us. We're going to take our chances with Harold Ramirez or something along those lines. The other thing, too, is you mentioned it. How many games did he play this past season? 60, 62? When's the last time he played a major league game?
August?
Okay. That's my point, is I don't expect him to come out the gates firing on all cylinders. I think there's going to be a timing and an adjustment, and it could take him April, some of May, maybe most of May to get settled in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of games that you lose in trying to get to that magic number of 30. So I'm going to say under. I think he'll get, maybe roughly, I could see, 26 to 29, but I'm not quite at the point where I want to say 30 as of yet.
His last game was on September 11th against the Yankees. Do you know when was his last home run?
Last home run was probably early September or late August.
August 4th.
Ooh, okay.
With a straight face, somebody's telling me this guy's going to be available for 140 games and he's going to bob 30 home runs. And again, when pitchers are nastier than ever, the ball is not going anywhere. I'm sorry, you can be a Rays fan, diehard Rays fan, but if you're legitimately putting green Skittles on Brandon Lowe hitting more than 30 home runs, you're a risky person, and I would not take any gambling advice from you.
Yeah,
I really would.
And the other thing to consider too is with a more balanced schedule, as I made my point about Randy, I'm going to add another point about Brandon in regards to that. That means a couple fewer games at Yankee Stadium, the short porch. Would that theoretically hurt him to some extent having those fewer games? And I mean,
Fenway.
Well, yeah, that too. And I guess Camden Yards getting bigger and more cavernous. And also the Orioles while you are playing fewer games against them. The Orioles aren't the Orioles of 2021 when Brandon Lowe bashed 39 bombs. Same thing with Randy, too. I mean, we know how Randy, he hit like 450 against the Orioles in 2021.
At least he had the same 20 bombs, At least he kept that up. But yeah, you're right. He wasn't the same 2021 to 2022. Good for the Orioles for improving their product on the field. Yeah. But no, I think this would be silly for a Rays fan to think, more than 30 home runs on a guy that played, that had 266 plate appearances, that had 8 home runs. Does he have the ceiling? Does he have the capability? 100%. Would you put green Skittles on him doing more than 30 home runs? I personally would not.
No. I know we've got so many other great questions that we'll get to, but Mia's question basically took up this entire episode. So I think we'll have to save the other question or questions that we have for another day. I do like how she mentioned Michael Brantley and being very conservative with, somewhere around 10 to 15 homers. Again, he's had some injury-plagued seasons, and he is getting longer in the tooth. I think even a Michael Brantley with, somewhere of 10 to 15 home runs, any little bit helps. And, with Brantley, it's not necessarily about the home runs. It's about what he does, like Yandy Diaz does, but from the left side of the plate. And then I also like how she mentioned Joey Wendle. I got a little nostalgic about Mindle there.
Yeah, no, it's always nice to hear people, hear who their favorite player is and who they miss. Obviously, with being a Rays fan, you're going to be a little bit more sentimental because the guys do move, rather quicker than other teams. But I think to play devil's advocate on that, Yandy Diaz has been on this team since 2019. Manny Margot since 2020. There are pieces that have Tyler Glass now from 2018. There are pieces, Brandon Lowe 2018. There are players that do have a little bit more of history with the Rays, but yeah, definitely Joey Wendle didn't have a great season this time around, but obviously it's not the same when you have the corporate culture that the Miami Marlins have than when the Tampa Bay Rays have. But no, Mia, great questions. We had a lot of fun. I thought that was going to be like one segment questions, but we really had a lot to say.
Yeah. What's funny too about all that is that, Joey Wendle, at least offensively, wasn't as strong as we've seen him prior. But according to Baseball Reference, he was a 2.5 WAR player, which I totally believe that he could still be that despite having an 86 OPS plus and a 658 OPS with the Miami Marlins. But what I also found interesting is that we talk about Michael Brantley, we talk about Joey Wendle, we mentioned Yandy Diaz, we mentioned Harold Ramirez. All those guys have something in common, not just that they played for the Rays, but they were at one point in the Indians/Guardians organization. They were either drafted or played minor league games or played major league games with that particular organization. I find that interesting.
Great observation, and it is interesting. Again, I will keep saying this. It's the Spider-Man meme. The two Spider-Mans pointing at each other. These two franchises. So they're Yandy Diaz, obviously. I don't know if you had him on that list, but obviously with $5 million, that was a trade. No. I think these two organizations are very well run. Hopefully right now, because it is Sunday evening, people, top of the 8th, Yankees 4, Cleveland 2. By the time this goes out, one of these teams is so far in their off season that this is going to be kind of funny for whoever is listening to this. So
I also say this, Joey Wendle, once an all-star, always an all-star, but he will only be a one-time all-star. He's not going to make another all-star appearance in his career, which is fine. He's very good. Yeah, he's not. He's the. I get one-time all-star vibes from Joey Wendle. He had his one, which took some dropouts to get that one, but
but nobody will remember that in 5 years. He's just going to be an all-star. It's awesome, and you can always carry that. That's like, when you're in film and you win an Academy Award, then you will always be Academy Award winner blank.
Yeah.
It's always with you. It follows you. It's fantastic.
At least he went to the thing, because there's a lot of guys that too cool for school, if you will.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen, the Locked On MLB podcast with Sully, our buddy. That is also free and available on all platforms. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you on Thursday.